Good morning, punters. We're very pleased to have Rob Waterhouse, bookmaker, robwaterhouse.com. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Very well indeed. Morning, John.
How are you, mate? You look refreshed. You've just back from your European vacations?
Seems a long time ago now.
It feels that way, doesn't it, when you come back from a break? Yeah. It doesn't take long to come back to reality and catch up on all the work. John, you noticed a little trinket there on top of Rob's piece of furniture, a bookcase there. Well, tell us about that, Rob.
Well, actually, it was a gift from a friend of mine who's the largest bookmaker in New Guinea. It actually is a warrior's mask. So it's pride of place. It is not true that it's a punter. It's not true that it's a punter. That's a malicious rumour.
It's not. This is not what you just send them a photo of that if they're behind on their bills back in the day. That was just oh my god. Anyway, beautiful.
Rob, I wanted to chat to you about some of the different factors affecting bookmakers at the moment, but most recently you've been and done a stint in the UK, and I'm interested in getting your perspective on the structure of UK racing versus Australia, and what recommendations or changes you'd make to ensure, you know, the longevity of bookmakers' presence in Australia in terms of where they're positioned. How do you see it?
Lucky this is not live.
Can you
hear me now?
Back? Okay, I can hear you now. So did you get that question okay?
Yes. Look, firstly, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the UK, although I finished a very narrow second. I thought it was very refreshing. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great meeting, and I really enjoyed it.
You never finished second, Rob. No one believes you ever finished second. And if it is, it's only for a very, very short time.
Oh, dear. I suppose the big point of contrast, I worked at on Saturday at Rose Hill for a good meeting with the up-and-coming stakes, and the previous week a Group 1 race. And we had 5 bookmakers on the rails and 2 in the outer. In contrast, and we say we have the best racing in the world, in contrast, Royal Ascot has 64 bookmakers on the rails and in the members area. They've got 128 in the paddock and 44 or 46 in the St Ledger enclosure, and another 24 on the flat. And it's a very vibrant ring. We just never stop writing tickets. I wrote each day a lot more tickets than I write to Australia, even though I was on only a fair stand there. So it was a great meeting, great racing, and how racing in Australia should be.
So over the 5 days, Rob, in terms of total hold, how does that compare to, say, you know, our larger carnivals here being the Autumn Carnival in Sydney and the Melbourne Carnival in spring?
I didn't have one credit client. It was all cash, and by and large, because I was in the main paddock, not the rails, main paddock, there are lots of little bets. We rode about 1,500 bets a day, and I held about £30,000, so $60,000, which compares. It's great business. I was really pleased with it.
So what you're really saying is that even in Melbourne during the spring, you might struggle to hold those sorts of quantities nowadays, given the position of where bookmakers are.
Well, Flemington is hopeless. I might write on Melbourne Cup Day 300 bets the day of Melbourne Cup Day. Caulfield's much better. Moonee Valley is much better. Sandown's much better. But to break 1,000 would be unusual. And I held it much better than at Ascot than I would in Australia.
Okay. So what do racing officials need to consider here? You know, in light of that experience that you've had in the UK, what recommendations could you make as a bookmaker, if you had the say, to help Australian racing increase its presence of on-course bookmakers, and for the good of the overall industry? What would you do if you had the choice?
I suppose the difficulty is that the bookmakers used to be in Australia all in front of the grandstand, and they were shunted at the rear of the grandstand to try and help the tote when the tote came in, and that was a hugely retrograde step. And since then, grandstands have been put up, not making it easy to access the front of the grandstand. Obviously, we should be in front of the grandstand, the people are, but it's a shame the grandstands aren't made for people to be able to wander down as they are in every racecourse in England. There is a racecourse in England where the bookmakers aren't in front of the grandstand, nor where it's not easy to have access to.
So certainly things that officials in Australia could do differently to help the cause.
Oh, well, of course, we'll start putting the bookmakers on the grandstand. It's quite obvious. We are, look, people who go to the races now, they're advertising them to saying, come to a great party. But it's hardly a great party venue. Whereas it's a great product betting on the horses. And Ascot's a very competitive market, as it actually is in Australia. It's just that the punters aren't exposed to it.
There's no
okay, so I want to talk to you about...
Sorry, if you go
Sorry,
if you go to a race meeting at Randwick or somewhere like that, it's very hard to say watch a horse parade, get back to the bookies ring, then try and find a position to watch the race. It's definitely not set up for that.
I used to get to the top of the grandstand as far towards the ledge as I could, say at Randwick. Every race was longer than a mile, and I'd run and get to the top and watch it. It wouldn't matter how far the race was. I can't find anywhere to get to at Randwick. It's just an impossible. I have to watch it on the TV. My good wife has stopped going to the races at Randwick because she says she can't be both in the mounting enclosure and get to watch the race live. I thought it was a poorly designed stand, the main stand at Randwick when they built it, but they have outdone themselves. And as far as the wink stand is actually worse. There's no seating at the wink stand. There are no seats at the grandstand. Only grandstand in the world like it. It's just a drinking hall.
Indeed. Okay, so plenty to think about there. Rob, in terms of the recent increases in POC and the effect it's had on online bookmakers generally, in particular, how has it affected your turnover? So we've seen, obviously, New South Wales increase, I think, and Queensland increase to 20%. What's it done to margins? What's it done to the turnover overall? And what sort of changes have you had to make in your business to combat this?
Well, you see, it's not actually a tax on bookmakers, it's a tax on punters. And the trouble is that the margins have been adjusted. We're very competitive, but the margins are adjusted to take away that problem. It costs us 72% of turnover to pay the bonuses, the tax on bonuses, and to pay the tax. And not just turnover profit, not turnover profit. So only leaves 28% left to pay rent, staff, and have a profit at the end of the day. It's extraordinarily tough. It's just unrealistic. But it's a tax on punters. And the biggest thing is that punters run out of money very quickly, and our number of punters betting this has dropped by about half in the last year.
So, like, putting it in layman's terms, people don't even realise they're losing money faster, and it's basically because where they were getting $6 2 years, 12 months, however long ago it was, they're now getting $5, and they just don't even realise.
Or $5.50 even $5.50. They don't. It's invisible to them, but they do run out of money more quickly, and it's a great shame for racing. We want to give the racing punters great value for their money and have them turning money over and over. We don't want them losing it quickly.
So in terms of positioning, say, Queensland racing, within your website structure and how you approach that, are you trying to reduce turnover on those meetings? How are you dealing with this issue?
We're just making sure that we are very competitive. The last 10 minutes of betting, we're the best odds every runner. So we're very competitive. But the fact remains that all the bookmakers have to make it work. And it's costing us 72% of our gross profit in taxes and bonus bets. Well, it's a huge impost.
It's insanity, really.
Yeah, it is bad. The taxes, my grandfather was a bookmaker in 1889, and there were no taxes until 1916, and they were very upset because they introduced a penny tax on tickets and a halfpenny tax in the ledger. They thought it was just dreadful.
Okay, so where do you see this all going in terms of the level of POC levied? is there room for any further increases, or does it now start to be, do the individual states need to start paring it back?
Well, I know that Racing New South Wales is very concerned at the drop in turnover with all the bookmakers and the Betfair. Betfair has gone through the floor in turnover because of the additional taxes. If they increase it again, the turnover will go down even lower. So I think it's a problem from their point of view. I'm not saying they have the wit to actually say we'll take those taxes back. But excuse my cough. But that is a problem.
My concern is, you said there's a lot of bookmakers now publicly coming out saying we can't earn it, 72% of gross. That's all you have to say that it's basically not possible to continue down this path. But as a punter who wants to turn over money and is being heavily restricted on, you could do it. It's very difficult. A lot of things taken away, margins increasing. From my perspective, okay, bookmakers are now at a position where they need a relaxation so they can survive and thrive, but it needs a further relaxation so that it can allow the industry to thrive and turnover to be increasing, not decreasing, not leveling out, actually thriving and growth. And my concern is that these big guys are going to come in, they're going to say, this is what we need to continue, but it probably needs to be even looked at from our perspective, that it needs to be rolled back a little bit further so that you can afford to take us on to a certain degree.
My best dinner party story is about 2 years ago. A very well-known punter came to my office. He's a rich man and he loves his racing and he bets all the time. And he said, Rob, I've been barred from the 12 places I bet with. I've been barred by them all. I can't get anywhere else. Can't get anywhere. And I said, congratulations. I'm proud of you. That's really, really good. No, he said, I've lost them all. And he gave me his accounts for the last 12 months. He'd lost 6.5 million to the bookies. The trouble is, when I did the sums, he was only lost 3.75% on turnover. And they just couldn't afford to have him. What a shame for racing that man can't lose his 6.5 million every year.
It's a good point.
And he's not even close at 3.75%. What would you say roughly,
7.
off the top of your head, does a client
7.
have to lose at to be a client worthwhile?
Sadly, it's 7.
And that'd be minimum, right? 7 minimum.
Yeah. Well, that's before you pay wages and rent.
Mm.
So ideally, Rob, if you're profiling clients, or any bookmaker out there is profiling clients, to make a reasonable level of return on the risk that you take, what do they have to lose? I mean, 7. Okay, you're saying you can justify 7.
Look,
really,
we don't profile we don't profile in the same way, and we find anyone that bets the last 10 minutes of betting, we're sort of happy to let them on. But we're not looking to be cowboys betting pre-post or being shot down or whatever else. And we find most of the punters aren't really after it themselves. And we just made a same thing, but you have to get 7. A punter has to lose 7 to make it viable. I'm not saying if someone loses 5, we're not going to bar them or anything, but we most certainly, just to survive, paying so much in taxes, you just have to trim your sails.
Yeah, okay. Now, in relation to the numbers of bookmakers, Rob, we've seen a real explosion in the numbers of small operators coming online and offering their services. This is obviously done through a range of means, through different sort of offerings that are out there. What's the financial requirements for a bookmaker now to take out a license? So if you're going to take out a license to fill it on track and to be guaranteed by the New South Wales Co-op, what's the minimum requirement now? If I wanted to stand up there at Rose Hill or Randwick and bet, what would I need to have behind me or show that I have?
Look, depending on what on-course bookmakers, depending on what enclosure you are or where the rails are attering, you need different amounts. I'm not sure the precise figures are, but you either have to get a bank guarantee for that amount, or the bookmakers company have to guarantee you, and 99% of bookmakers get the co-op to guarantee you, which means you've got to show that amount of assets or more. It's not overly hard.
I've got to be someone of reasonable substance, though.
Have a couple of 100,000.
Take out a license. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
if I now want to operate in the online arena and open an operation and be, obviously licensed, say, by the NT government, what sort of requirements do I need for that?
Look, these things are in legislation, what else, and we should be looking at that rather than asking me. But it's not a great deal. But of course, it goes up as your turnover goes up.
Right, right. So with the numbers that have actually come on board, I suppose my concern might be as a punter, what if I happen to, parlay a Trixie or an all-up bet with one of these small operators, and let's just say it might be a $50,000 payout or greater. My concern as a punter would be maybe perhaps getting paid, not from someone like you, who's obviously got the.
Dare I say, some of the larger operators, they have all sorts of rules and conditions that stop having to pay those sort of bets. So it's not just the small operators. I think we should more frighten of the large operators.
But even as a general punter, though, betting with some of these smaller operators, excluding someone like yourself, is that a concern?
I don't think it is, Paul, to be honest. But I understand. I hear what you're saying.
I think they limit you so hard that they can't hurt themselves, and that's kind of the way that bookmaking's gone. They're not bookmaking as such; they're more poker machine houses hidden as bookmakers.
Yeah, they're like a shopkeeper selling products.
Is that how you feel they are? That they're more of a marketing arm now than they are an actual bookmaker?
It's all marketing, isn't it? And look, I'm lucky that I'm well known and don't have to spend much on marketing. But that is the key to it. It's a marketing business. And the big operators, they're experts at it.
So a lot of these bookmakers or small operators now get somebody else to manage the risk for them. So it's a more automated type of model. As a punter, if I say back a horse and force its price down with some of these operators, if they are in fact a subscriber to that model whereby they have somebody else managing that risk, where that company or organisation might be managing the risk for a number of bookmakers, does that intellectual property then effectively then get shared, or doesn't it have the propensity to be shared across those other bookmaking sites? So in fact, I'm potentially hurting myself by backing it with them.
I suspect sometimes you are.
John, you're smiling away there. Let's get your rebuttal there, John.
Do you see them surviving, Rob? These little guys?
I don't think I think there'll be a great clean out. We had the sugar hit of COVID. The sugar hit's now gone, and these extra taxes, I can see there being a great thing in the ranks. And one of the leading bookmakers in Victoria told me he's taken a spell from his online business and trying to organise it. Obviously, because he can't make it work as it currently stands. And he's one of the biggest in Melbourne.
It feels to me like these guys, these pop-up bookmakers, whatever you want to call them, are just basically the affiliates of old that have been cast aside because big companies can't afford them anymore. So they're using their existing database to open their own and then obviously getting someone else to manage the other side of the business.
Yeah, but I'm sure that happens a bit. Yeah.
Because realistically, Rob, I mean, what does it take to run even a small online bookmaking operation? What sort of staff do you need? What type of structure do you need to manage that? Do you need to have a trading desk these days, or do you think it's a viable option to outsource that risk management? I would have thought that's something that
Paul, we do it ourselves and don't feel comfortable someone else doing it. But I understand if bookmakers do it. We try and be as mean as we possibly can, and we have no difficulty being very, very competitive. We're hard to beat in the last 10 minutes.
Personal question, but do you run? As a personal question, do you run this business like you would your on-track business? As in, if you've got an opinion, or do you push things, or do you mainly just play the player online and let them run? So
we just, in effect, put up the best prices every runner and let the punters do their worst.
But you don't manage the risk of that race too heavily.
No.
So you would potentially have very different prices on track to what you do online in that last 5 or 10 minutes of the race.
Yep.
Whereas obviously your on track business is something that you're going to manage based on opinions and obviously the way the money's being pushed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And why should punters look at Rob Waterhouse as an option?
Well, it's hard to get a price on what we offer in the last 10 minutes. They won't do better than us.
As a punter, are you still better off being on track?
Of course, you're better off being on track. Yeah, of course, you're better off being on track. But you know, unfortunately, everyone likes to get the gourmet food home delivered to home at the McDonald's prices.
That's the kind of the secret now, isn't it? So it's nearly non-existent. The online is starving themselves. You can still get, as you say, you can be as competitive as you can be within reason with the taxes put on you, but you can't be as competitive as an on-course bookmaker can be.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Rob, I mean, you know, you say that punters still have an advantage on course, say in Sydney. You mentioned 5 rails bookmakers, I think you said. So on a Saturday, that means we can get on the win 25, plus a couple of the outers, you know, maybe 30. Obviously, punters can get that type of coverage anyway through the MBLs and spreading their risk across a lot of the online bookmakers. What makes it a compelling argument for the punters to still be on track, do you think?
Well, on a Saturday, there perhaps wouldn't be 1 million punters having a bet, would there? But there'd be in the many hundreds of thousands of punters having a bet. And the 120 back horse to win $30,000 would be 3 or 4 people. So you're not talking about a very big population of big punters. Whereas the ordinary punters, they get great service on course or even online.
And what sort of figures do you think? What sort of percentages are you betting on typically on a Saturday? Do you think on track?
Well, in the last 5 minutes, I always got under 110, and you can often get over Betfair. They want a price on Betfair, and I'm not necessarily top odds. It's a very competitive market on course. Very competitive.
And of course, if you have an opinion on one that you don't like, or you'll obviously offer a lot better price, and
a lot of them win too, Paul. I must tell you.
They do. We broken clock, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm 25 years still trying to back a winner with you. I still never had Anyway.
It's just variance, John. You'll get there.
You get there in the end. Don't give up.
Yeah, variance, that's right. Yeah. I'm still in shock with you saying you didn't get the right end of the stick in NASCAR. Yeah. I find it very hard to believe.
Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you very much for giving us your time today.
You do a great job for the punters. Do a great job. I had some people to dinner on Saturday night, and they said you were the solid gold of all of the information suppliers. You were solid gold.
That's good to hear.
Good on you.
And of course, John does an excellent job with his.
Good to see you, mate. Hopefully see you soon.
Good on you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Rob. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.